Welcome back to my channel, guys. It's Diva the Divine Light. And as I promised you guys, I was going to be reading Lisa Van Allen's book, Surviving the Pied Piper, The Untold Story, which talks about life before and after the trial. Now, we all know Lisa Van Allen's story. She said she met him when she was 17. She hooked up because she went to a video shoot that he had with a friend of hers. And right away, she was picked by him. She got his number. They started communicating. She flew back and forth at first for a little bit. Then he had her move into the house in Chicago, Olympia Fields, I believe it was. Or was she living in the studio? I forgot which one. And things were okay, I guess. She never really talked too much about abuse. You know, the only thing that she did talk about was how he's used her sexually and took advantage of her sexually, using her to play in his sexual gratifications of having threesomes and orgies and foursomes, and, you know, he had her basically as like a sex slave. You know, hopefully, you know, in this book, she gets to detail a little bit more about her life with him. She dedicated this book to her children, and she also forwards this book to her fiance. And we're going to read the prologue. We're going to get into the prologue. I'm going to read the prologue, and I'm going to read a few chapters in, and then I'll come back and continue the story, you know, as I do. Okay, so the prologue says, the means to survive is often not something we naturally have, but situations in life force us to adapt in order to make it through to the other side. I guess I can say I started to develop them when I was young. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut on June 11th, 1980. Two parents, too young to have me and not equipped enough to handle the role. I ended up in foster care on Capon Street at the tender age of 1, right along with my newborn brother. I don't remember much from my first couple of years there, but I know I must have missed my mom. I never stopped looking for her to come get me while I was there, even up until the day I was adopted. Miss Wilburn was the person in charge at the time. She had no use for me. In my eyes, she could never be my mother or take her place. She knew it too, and resented me for it. When it came to my brother, she was nice and treated him as her own, because he was a newborn baby. I was one of the younger kids there, aside from my brother, and the only girl in a house full of boys. However, she made no allowances for me. At 3 years old, I ran with the boys and dressed like them too. As she only put me in the clothes that were there. She didn't buy any girls' clothes. She almost never did my hair. As long as I got to go outside, I didn't care. We'd play in the graveyard behind the house and make mud pies. Those were the carefree times where I could forget the day-to-day strife and the day-to-day strife of being in that place. Miss Wilburn was a very strict woman with a mean spirit, even though she went to church very often. We spent all the holidays here. We would have to eat whatever she cooked. Now I know you might be saying, well, that's nothing. But to a kid, it's a pretty big deal. Parents will often attempt to make the foods their children will eat and sometimes express their love for them by making the foods they love. It was clear that although Miss Wilburn wanted to be seen as a parental figure, a lot of her actions were cold and devoid of love. It's one thing if it's due to being impoverished, but another if they just don't care enough to consider doing so. Fish with bones in it is something I do not eat still till this very day. As a kid, I was made to eat it, but at 3 years old, you don't know how to take out the bones beforehand. I would choke on them, but she didn't seem to be concerned. If you were still hungry after dinner, then that was your problem. She never gave any extra snack or helpings to fill you up. There were plenty of times we'd go to bed hungry, even after having dinner. It became so unbearable after a while that one night I snuck into the kitchen. I can remember the roaches scattering as I turned on the light. I stacked some things on top of each other in order to reach the cabinet to grab the peanut butter and eat it from the jar. This I would do for several nights. However, one night, she got suspicious that someone was sneaking in the kitchen to get the peanut butter. I don't know if I left a mess or left something out of place, but she knew. I'll never forget the look on her face that night as she made us get up and out of beds to line up one by one. I could feel the anxiety taking over me as we were made to open our mouths so she could check our breath for peanut butter. I was scared and trying not to break before she got to me. I wanted to be anywhere but there. Finally, it's my turn for inspection. I remember my heart beating fast, as I could already anticipate the beating she later gave me. That wasn't the worst trauma I faced there. Being the only girl amongst all the boys that are not siblings with little to no supervision is usually a receipt for disaster, especially with older children in the mix. Oh God, Lord. She was in a foster care, and this lady didn't like her. The lady preferred the boys over the girl. Had her dress in boys' clothes because she didn't want to buy her any clothes. And then she's in there with a bunch of boys, and now the boys are older than her. So we can kind of figure out, let's see what happens next. Like, I can only just imagine what this poor girl is about to say. Some of the older teenage boys used to have friends come over to play basketball. These friends would be the ones to take away my innocence. Ay, ay, ay. See, I know it. Lighting me spliff on that one. Oh, Lord. So the older ones would be the ones to take away my innocence. They would watch me as I went to the bathroom and often barged in because the latch on the door was not a secure one. Even worse, they'd often corner me when I was alone and take turns making me jack them off. Oh, God. Wow. I just had a flashback. I knew it felt disgusting and wrong deep down inside. But I didn't know any better. I was also afraid to piss them off and afraid of what would happen if I told. Besides, who would I tell? Who was in my corner? No one taught me about good touch or bad touch. I was 4 years old, alone and unprotected, which makes for easy prey for those with the predatory mind. As I got older, 5 or 6, I would have some moments where I would get away from Miss Wilburn and foster care. My grandma would come get me sometimes and take me to McDonald's. Sometimes my aunt would come to get me and take me to spend the night at her house. At the end of it all, I still ended up right back at foster care, which put a damper on the time period before I'd return. I often cried not to go back, and lucky for me, it finally resonated. Not with blood relatives, but still very much family. My grandmother's friend would often come to visit me when my grandmother was too busy. My grandmother used to tell her about me all the time, so she decided to come see me when my grandmother was not able to. This is how we developed our own special bond. I was even invited to be in her wedding. She would be the one to adopt me. Wow. Her grandmother or her aunt didn't take her. I wonder why. That was one of the happiest days of my life. I left that place and did not look back. It only hit me later that I had really left my brother behind. I knew he would be okay because she, Miss Wilburn, could pass herself off as a mother to him, being that he came to foster care young and didn't know any better. All I knew is that I had made it out of there, but not without damage. The trauma I experienced in that place would have me do things like repeatedly turn the stack of magazines over that my new mom had in the bathroom because I felt that the people on the cover were watching me. I may have left that place, but certain elements or experiences didn't leave me. The ordeal of being thrusted into the foster care system so young, having no stable family beginnings, and the sexual abuse would cause me to have an emptiness or void within myself. These voids, people will always find themselves trying to fill, and often with the wrong people in the wrong places. It is those same voids and issues of abandonment that made me vulnerable to those with predatory, abusive, or sociopathic type characteristics. The sexual abuse that I experienced at an early age gave me an early perception that sex was mostly for someone else's pleasure. The manifestation would play out in a lot of my relationships as I forgot about loving and pleasing the most important person, which is myself. The old proverb teaches that death and life are in the power of the tongue. So, what we speak on, we give life and power to. So as to not give any more power to one of many sexual predators, this work is intentional in using their names as less as possible. Power to all survivors. May you no longer be oppressed by the silence, lack of support, and the trauma. Amen, Lisa. Amen. And I'm sorry that you went through abuse and you had no real background history of no support. I'm sorry that you went through that. So now we're on to chapter 1. Today is the day. Today is the day that I speak a truth I've been speaking for well over a decade. Now is the time they are ready to listen. As I sit here in this styling chair, waiting for the makeup artist and stylist to prep me, I turned to face the mirror beside me. No makeup, no slayed coof, just me, raw, barefaced, and vulnerable. I can honestly say with confidence at this stage in my life, I am quite comfortable and love the image I see reflected back at me. I contributed all to the love I grew to have for just me. It wasn't always this way. I had to grow after going through a lot of things to become this person. They say in order to really move forward, a person must really go backwards. I'd have to take it all the way back to 1998. A pivotal moment in my young adolescent life when I met the future self-proclaimed Pied Piper of R&B. It was a nickname he would give himself a decade later. I nor the world realized was just how true to form the title would be. Oof, that's so true. That is so true, Lisa. You right. He's definitely the Pied Piper girl. Like I read that article about that in one of my videos there. I talk about being the Pied Piper and everything. Yeah, he really did fill that characteristic to the T. The only thing is that, he didn't lead the town's children away and, killed them. But everything else, yeah. So, and she says, it all started out with me helping out a friend. A long-time male friend of mine wanted me to accompany his girlfriend, an aspiring singer, to a video shoot as an extra because he didn't want her to go alone. I was 17 and ready for my close-up. Plus, I didn't think twice about what type of environment that comes with artists and the music industry. I was just going to support my friend's girlfriend and hope to see my face flash across the screen for half a second at least, just so that I could show all my friends that I was there, and that's all. That's me with the blonde bob and cute outfit, is what I anticipated on saying. The video shoot was taking place at a mansion in Alpharetta, Georgia, in the evening. We were told to bring a change of clothes that would fit the various scenes they were shooting. So the meeting point to get to the shoot was actually a church. So no one would know the exact location. A shuttle came to pick everyone up and take them to the mansion. R. Kelly bought a house, didn't he? Bought a church or something like that and made it into a house or something, or right? Oh God, Lord. So that's where she was. So she had to meet at this church so that nobody would know the location. So a shuttle came to pick everyone up and take them to the mansion. Once we got there, we had to sign in, and we were told where to go afterwards to get ready to shoot different scenes from the video. So during the downtime of shooting scenes for the video, a guy came up to me, whom I later found out was a cousin. He told me that Rob wanted to talk to me. In my mind, I'm wondering who Rob could be, so I asked him. When he answered with R. Kelly, it threw me off a bit, as I was only 17 and probably one of the youngest females at the shoot. I paused for a minute because I was trying to figure out what he could possibly want with me. Did I do something wrong? Did he want to kick me off the set? I didn't know what to think. I definitely was not expecting the exchange that happened next. I followed the guy to another part of the mansion, nervously and a bit puzzled. When I reached the area where he was sitting, after we exchanged pleasantries, he began to ask me questions, not normal questions, that one would ask someone they just met, and especially not a young girl you just met. He asked if I had a boyfriend. I told him I didn't. He asked my age, and I told him I was 17. Next, he asked if my mom would let me come to Chicago, to which I replied that she would, even though I had not asked her at all. In my mind, I thought that was the answer he would have liked to hear. And I didn't want to say no to someone of his caliber. He continued to ask more questions about me and my life. He was very deliberate in his questioning for a reason. He needed to gauge if I presented him with a situation that he could easily maneuver and manipulate, or if there would be too many obstacles, like overprotective parents or a boyfriend. I just thought he was trying to get to know me. What should have been red flags to me felt like someone taking an interest in me. It made me feel special, and this is something I haven't yet experienced to this degree, especially from the opposite sex. Right, because she was being abused at the time, from very young, up until she got adopted, and she got adopted, and she probably had her little boyfriend in between R. Kelly. He probably broke her heart or something, but she didn't see it as like an older man taking an interest into her. That was something that was shocking for her. So I started to shiver a little as the breeze picked up. He seemed to be concerned, asked me if I was cold. I told him that I was, so he asked if I wanted to go sit on the tour bus. Looking back, this definitely should have been another red flag given the differences in our ages, and he was basically a stranger, even though he was a celebrity. Exactly. Wow. Because, you just met her. You saw her. You thought she was cute. You told somebody to go over to her. You brought her back to wherever with her. You started asking her questions. You want to know if she had a boyfriend. You want to know what her life was like, how her parents were or whatever. And then all of a sudden, now you're like, come with me over here. You're cold. That was your next thing. You're like, all right, well, let me see if maybe she's cold. Maybe she'll go into the bus with me if Are you cold? Yes. Oh, well, let's go back on the tour bus, and get yourself a little warmed up. Wow, that's definitely a setup. So once we got on the tour bus, however, at the time, I was happy to talk with him. And the fact that he seemed to have an interest in getting to know me made me feel a bit at ease. Once we got on the tour bus, we talked some more. All of a sudden, he started kissing me. Then kissing led to touching. And touching then led to him pushing me back onto the bed in the tour bus and us having sex. That's not what I came there for, but I was now in a situation where I didn't know or think to be mindful. I didn't want to have sex, but I also didn't want to disappoint him by telling him to stop. Besides, he did take an interest in me out of all the girls there. This is what I told myself, at least. I do realize now that I wasn't in the best of headspace to make the best decisions given my background and upbringing. At the time, he seemed to fill a void within me. But in reality, he'd be the one to create more and exploit the ones that already existed. When it was over, he told me I could remain there on the bus to rest and take shelter from the cold. He got off the bus to go shoot some more of the video. In between scenes, he would come back to the bus, but he insisted that I continue to stay on the bus. I thought he just wanted me to stay on so we could talk, but looking back, it's more likely that he didn't want anyone to see me get off the bus. I remained on the bus until the video shoot wrapped, which wasn't until the next morning. We exchanged numbers and he told me to call him. It was a whole month before I gathered up the nerve to call, because I really didn't know what to say. Even though we had sex on the tour bus the month prior, I still was not at ease enough to carry on a full conversation with the grown man. I finally got the nerve to dial the number, and he picked up. There wasn't much of a conversation, to be honest. After I identified myself, he immediately asked when I would be able to get to Chicago. After I gave him a date, he put me in contact with his assistant, June Brown. He had instructed me on what to do. He sent me the money to get the stuff I needed. I didn't have a state ID at the time, but I had to get one to get a plane ticket. Once I got to Chicago, he said he would have a driver waiting to pick me up from the airport. Since I paid for everything with the money he gave me, there was really no paper trail for him. Right. No receipts. No receipts. Just give her the money. So she's saying that it was a whole month before she decided to call him. Like, she just sat there with his number and thought about it and was nervous and didn't know what to do. She was like, should I call him? She was probably like in her head, but we had sex. And maybe I liked it. You know, maybe she was like, I like it. And yeah, he's cute. And he's R. Kelly. Call him. Like, you know. I can imagine the things that were racing through her mind. You know, the excitement she was getting, nervousness she was getting. You know, she didn't know what she was getting herself into. June Brown, he is the one who knows about Lisa Van Allen, of course. And he instructed her on what to do. And he sent her money to get the stuff that she needed. So I guess it was so there had to be a trace somehow. How did he send her the money? Did he send her the money through wire? Wire transfers? Right? So he sent her money through wire transfers. Sent her the money so she can get to the airport and buy her ID. Get her plane ticket. You know? And there was no paper trail. Wow. So the permission from my mother was what I needed next. I asked at the most convenient time for me, but the most inconvenient time for my mom. She was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders at that moment. Her mom had just had a stroke, and the doctors also diagnosed her with cancer. My mom was the one taking care of her on top of everything else she was doing. I don't think she had the strength to fight me on it, so she gave in. But she wanted a number where she could contact me. It was an unfair advantage that worked in my favor. I did give her the number to the studio so she could check on me from time to time, so she would be somewhat at ease. So Lisa, you asked mom for permission. She got mad at you. She just couldn't take it no more. She was like, no at first, and then she was like, all right, go ahead, go. But Did you tell her you were going to be with R. Kelly? What? Did you tell her that you were going to be with R. Kelly? Then she says, typically, a young teen traveling alone on a trip to Chicago under these conditions sounds like a recipe for disaster. So she was 17. She's underage. So how did she get this ID? Unless she was already 18. She said she was born in June, right? And this was a month later. She didn't say time frame, but okay. So, like she said, typically a young teen traveling alone on a trip to Chicago under these conditions sounds like a recipe for disaster. I was a bit headstrong and thought that I would be able to handle whatever came my way. You see, a year earlier, at 16, I was a little rebellious, and at the time, I was not getting along with my mom. Normal teenage stuff. I thought it would be a great idea if I went to stay with my favorite cousin for a while in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It would give me some time to bond with members of my birth mom's side of the family. In my mind, I would be having the time of my life soon. Little did I know that this trip will be a test of my will and a testament to the lengths I would go to make a situation work, even if it wasn't conducive to me personally. Some things we do subconsciously but are unaware of until we take the time to realize and examine them. Soon as I got there, I was hit with a stark reality. My aunt, although a mother, was not the same as my mother, and not your typical mother. Her style of parenting was the survival of the fittest approach. She didn't cook much or buy groceries, so we had to figure out a way to eat. She also didn't give us a key, so if you got home when she wasn't there, you couldn't get in. I was often stuck outside in the midst of a blizzard. I had to adapt fast. I started to ride the bus for hours on end and stay on until the route ended to keep warm, and because I had nowhere else to go at the time, if friends were at home, I'd stay with them until she came back, and I could get into the house. Sometimes that wouldn't be until the next morning. I had very little money. On top of having to feed myself, I needed clothes, hygiene products, plus books and supplies for the school I was attending downtown. I had enrolled in an alternative school since all the regular schools were filled to capacity. I developed my hustling spirit in this way because I was determined to figure out how to survive this situation so that I wouldn't have to go back home and admit defeat. I would flip candy for profit or get things at a discount at the mall and other places, then resell them in order to get the money for the things that I needed. I even taught myself how to braid hair so I could become a stylist to other girls that I knew. I would continue to do this until one of my other aunts caught wind of how I was living and decided to send me back home. my adaptability and survivor's mentality I further developed during my 6-month stint in Minneapolis. Had my 17-year-old self confident that I would be fine on this trip to Chicago. I also thought I would eventually have his love and affection to protect and help guide me. Chapter 2. On the way to Chicago, I was overwhelmed with emotions. I was excited because this was my first big trip and nervous because I was going to see him again. I was wondering what I would say when I first saw him or what he would say to me. Our conversation before I embarked on this journey was very short. I didn't know exactly what I was about to walk into, but overall, my thoughts were positive. When I landed, I was greeted by a driver that held a sign with my name on it, which made me feel like someone of importance. First, I was taken to a hotel so that I could drop off my bags, and then the driver took me to the studio. The studio, Chicago Tracks, was kind of close to the hood. Cabrini Green Housing Projects was not far from it. So there was a big fence around it to keep people from easily accessing the studio. It was at least 15 feet tall. I had to push the call button in order for someone to let me inside. After identifying myself and whom I was there to see, for the person who answered the page, there was an awkward silence as they went to confirm if I was supposed to be there. I was finally let inside the gate, and one of his runners had come to meet me at the door. There were plenty of rooms inside the studio. I noticed as we walked through the building, I finally reached the studio where he was doing his recording for the day. Once inside, we greeted each other and exchanged hugs. That day, we just chilled and listened to some music. I was glad I made it there safely, and his interest seemed to still be there. What was clear to me from the first couple of days of being there was that he definitely had a set routine that he kept. He was very methodical in that way. He would definitely spend time in the studio until the wee hours of the morning before going to sleep. However, his days didn't really start until the evening because of not getting to sleep until it's almost time for the sun to rise. After getting up, he'd go eat. Then he would go record in the studio for some time. After that, we'd hop in his Range Rover or Lincoln Navigator to go to Hoops, which was a 24-hour gym. Around this time, it would be close to midnight and we'd stay for an hour or two. We'd hit Rock and Roll McDonald's downtown for something to eat, before finally finishing the night off with more studio time. It was his favorite place to get a grilled chicken sandwich with lettuce, tomato, and no bread, plus a coffee to drink. Sometimes we'd go eat at Portillo's during the day, where he'd get a hot dog with mayo, lettuce, and tomato. Afterwards, I'd usually be in the studio with him, lying on the couch or off watching movies in another room. Sometimes it did get boring in a way because it was very repetitive. However, being in the studio with him creating music made up for it. He had a way with words and melodies that captivated you, which he definitely knew and would use to his advantage. I was only supposed to stay briefly, as I had not one but two jobs waiting for me back at home. I worked in a retail at two neighboring department stores in the mall part-time. My intentions were to stay only for the weekend, but he kept intentionally making me miss my flight. Even though it frustrated me a little, it felt good to have someone to make you feel needed and wanted in that kind of way. When I did finally make it back home, he kept calling for me to come back. I traveled back up there about a week later. This time, however, he didn't want me to go back home at all. I was thinking that he cared about me that much and always wanted me around. It was actually the first step of him gaining more control in the relationship. I told him that I would eventually be fired from my job if I keep missing my flight to go back home, since I had been missing work. So he asked me about how much I make in pay a week. I replied that I was making around $300 a week, which was a lot to a 17-year-old in '98. He responded by going into his pocket and pulling out $300 and handing it to me. There were no more discussions about my job after that day. There were also no discussions about me staying. I was just there, and he knew it. From then on, whenever he would be, so would I. From late nights in the studios and many hotels when he would travel for work and events, we were attached at the hip for most part that goes beyond figuratively speaking. He was a sex nympho with an insatiable appetite. He'd want to have sex at least 3 times or more a day. Wow. So he meets her, gains her trust for the moment. That first day he met her, he had sex with her. She didn't talk to him for a month. She goes to meet up with him. She hangs out with him. He made her miss her flight. She loses her job, or she leaves her job, shall we say, for $300 a week. So don't worry about, he's like, don't worry about that. I'll pay your salary. Just stay with me. Like, wow. Wow. And these girls are like, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. These women, these supporters of R. Kelly, it's funny how they're like, oh, the women just want bags. They just want this. They just want that. But in every situation that I've heard so far, he offers them money. They don't say, listen, well, you better take care of me if you want me to stay with you. You better give me money and you better buy me bags. That's the only way I'm going to stay with you. No, that's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. He's offering them money. Look at this. He just made this girl stay home. He made her leave her home, okay, to her both jobs so that he can stay with her. And he paid her salary. He took care of her. He was like, listen, don't worry. I'll give you $300 a week plus whatever else you need. Wow. Then He literally treated her like a prostitute. Literally. Has anybody ever seen Pretty Woman? Yep. That's kind of like a scenario, kind of in a sense. Like, she met a rich man. She was from the slum. Met a rich man. She was a hooker. He was a lonely man. Wanted a good time. Met up with her. Swept her off her feet. You know, and that was a Prince Charming at the end of the day. You know, it's a little different, but he just like, that's what he does. He got money and power and charm and sucks them in. Yeah, money, power, respect. That goes a long fucking way. So he even made her have sex at least three times or more a day. Like Azriel was talking about it. She said at least 3 to 5 times a day. Like, bow, 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 bow. Okay? And she's 17 at this time. She wasn't even 18 yet. Ay, Dios mío. Chapter 3. I think this is going to be the last chapter, guys. I'm going to leave this to be the last one, and then I'll continue the reading another day. Unless I decide to want to go on a little more. It's, wow. So, chapter 3. Life with him started out fun. And I was having the time of my life. It was fine until he got comfortable and convinced that I was not about to just go home at the spur of that moment, and that I seemed content in the dependency on him. He gradually started to introduce me to different things, such as weird fetishes and other people. He was slowly integrating the real person he was into our relationship, while testing how much of himself he was able to incorporate without me giving complete resistance. He insisted on keeping mementos of his moments of pleasure. So he liked to bring cameras around when he had sex. He would often record us having sex and liked for me to call him daddy. Sex with him had some mechanical elements to it because he would coach you the whole time. He'd tell you where to put your hand, how to lay, when to poke your butt out, how to moan, etc. It's like you're always on set at a porn shoot, and he was a director. He liked it when you'd speak in a high-pitched voice. Tell him about how you got your shape from your mama. Tell him how you got your shape from your mama, or things of that manner. That was just the tip of the iceberg. What lay in wait underneath the surface was nothing I could have imagined. Oof, Lord. This man is something else. Like I said, and then, he needed to be like Mr. Grey. Has anybody ever watched 50 Shades of Grey? You have to ask for permission. You have to also develop safe words. He was just an abuser. So it wasn't like he was doing this to, how do you call that everybody's saying now, all the supporters are saying, role play. No. This was not no goddamn role play. Okay? I'm here to tell you, that is not role play. When you role play, both parties are involved. Both parties know what's going on. Both parties agree to do these things. It's not just here, sit this way, sit that way, do this, do that, smile, do this, open wide, and you do as you're told. Or you can get the fuck out. No, that's not. No. The parties have to be consenting parties. They have to agree. And you both have to come out with safe words. Because if somebody's feeling uncomfortable, that safe word is there to keep you safe. And you know that you're supposed to chill out, relax, slow down, stop. This is foreplay, okay? That is foreplay. This shit that R. Kelly's doing is abuse. Y'all better go watch that 50 fucking Shades of Grey. Okay? Both parts. Alright? Okay. Oh, that's just, Lord. Poor Lisa. I'm sorry, Mamita, you went through that with that man. So she says, he was a bit of an exhibitionist, but in an oppressive kind of way. Sometimes he would be in the studio recording and just start jacking off, no matter who was in the room. The runners would come in and give him messages. Other guys might be in the room, and the engineer was there mostly. However, everyone pretended as if there was nothing going on and everything was normal. They didn't say anything. Maybe they chalked it up to one of those weird quirks that came along with working with an artist. Some artists brought drugs for inspiration, but he brought his penis. Either that, or they were just too afraid to say anything for fear of losing their jobs. Oh, God. You see, you know, I don't know if y'all watched that BBC documentary about R. Kelly with the Savages in it, and Kitty was in it. I believe Lisa was in it as well. You know, where they even had a talk with one of his engineers. And one of the engineers was even saying that how, you know, he got his inspiration for the song Feeling on Your Booty. Because it so happened to be that they were in the studio, and here it is, some girl in a thong. She had no bra on. She was completely naked, but in a thong and some heels. And she completely was bent over, and he was feeling on her booty, slapping her ass, and he was just like, feeling on her booty, like, and then he said, yo, I think I'm gonna make this a song, yo, and starts singing, and he's feeling on these girls' booties, and then it was one girl that went to a couple of chicks in the room, like, each girl knocking as they entered the room. He must have had somebody texting these girls and telling them, okay, R. Kelly's ready for you. Go walk into the studio now. Remember to knock 3 times. You understand? That is a fucking enterprise. He used all those people that ran for him, assisted for him, worked for him, managed him. They all got paid to shut the fuck up and do your job. And they all said, yes, master. Because at the end of the day, these people needed to eat. They weren't worried about what was going on with these girls. They didn't know that these girls were misguided. They just thought they were fast-ass little girls, probably. And just like, oh, well. No, man. He was taking advantage of these girls. You know, other people who saw things probably looked at it like that. And then people who worked for him were just like, oh, my God, he's got a sickness. And this is crazy. This man's got to stop. And those were the people who decided to turn their backs on him. And fucking tell it all. And the feds know it all. Witnesses, statements. They got it all. Oh, Kelly's fucking perverted, nasty ass. That's what he is, a perverted, nasty ass. And you people who support this behavior are ridiculous. I'm sorry, but yous are ridiculous. And need to get a fucking grip of reality. So, that means that anything, if you guys were to meet R. Kelly face to face, yous would drop for him. Yous would give your daughters to him, wouldn't yous? And be happy and proud like, oh, my daughter was with R. Kelly. Yay. And then after you find out your daughter gets abused and all this and that, and she's crying and you don't talk to her no more and you get no contact with her, and then what happens? Now what? What are you going to do then? What are you going to do? How would you fucking react? How would you react? You'd be banging down the doors, calling the fucking cops, the FBI's, talking to the news media. My daughter got it with R. Kelly. I thought it was okay. And you know what? It wasn't okay. He took advantage of her. He's hurt her. And I don't know what's going on with her. I need to hear from her. There's rumors, people talking. I don't know. I need to find out. What do you mean I can't talk to my child? What did I do to her? I didn't do anything. Why has she stopped talking to me? You know, these are the things that people don't logically think about. They just want to see what the fuck they want to see. I'm totally convinced by this. I was watching that girl, Skylife, I think her name is. Lord, somebody help that one, Jesus. Lord, somebody help that one, Jesus. And watching that other one, Passionately Gangster. Lord, help me, Jesus. Lord, help me, Jesus. These women don't know anything. They're just going on whatever the hell their people are. I don't know what they're listening to. Whatever they're listening to, they're misconstruing things. They got things mixed up. They are confused. This is why they need to watch Grown Man more. They need to watch Larry. Okay? They need to go watch Goddess Dawn. They need to go check out Atmos Love. They need to check me out. Diva the Divine Light. Logical thinkers. People with morals. Real common sense. Parents who love their children. You know, wow. I'm just amazed by these people. I'd be amazed by these people. So let's continue, because this is getting interesting now. This is really getting interesting, and it's getting me hype as I go along. Okay, so as we were saying that, and the engineer was there mostly. So, however, everyone pretended as if there was nothing going on and everything was normal. And, you know, the people, they were there and they saw all these things and they were just afraid to lose their jobs. Then she continues to say, so before we took a trip to Los Angeles once, he made sure to give me a little pep talk. By this time, it had become routine for him to give me these talks when it came to things I may be uncomfortable with or things I didn't really want to do. He said he really wanted to have his first threesome. He went on and on about how he'd never done it before and that he would really like it if his first threesome could be with me. I didn't really say much about it to him, but in my mind, the thoughts were turning. I was thinking that I didn't want to do the threesome because I didn't really want to share him with another person. However, I was also thinking that since he was a famous man expressing to me about his first time experience that he wants to have with me, it may not be good to tell him no. He could just as easily go pick another female to do it with, and I didn't want that. I should feel special that he picked me to have this new experience. It was completely the wrong thought path to have, but I was 17 and I loved the man who took the time to make me feel like I was unique. I felt somewhat obligated to do it. I did it to please him, but I got very little pleasure out of it. I was jealous because this girl had her hands on my man and he was touching her. Apart from that, she wouldn't stop performing. What I mean is that she was obviously someone that was an aspiring singer looking to get put on in the industry. There was a moment when he left the two of us alone in the hotel room together. This chick would not sit down. She was constantly singing or dancing or both, as if she was auditioning, or to show that she had a one-up on me because of her talent and that she should be the main girl. I don't know what her deal was. I just know that I was annoyed. Wow, wait a minute, hold the whole shit up. What? What? Rashonda Landfair was... Oh my God, the damage he did to that little girl. Did you not hear what she just said? The damage he did to that little girl. This motherfucker has to pay for it. He got away with it, and he has to pay for it. He has to pay for it. Look at where her fucking mental space was. At the age that she was. 14 at this time. Because this was 1998. 14. He's been taking advantage of this baby since she was like 12 or 13. He met her at 12, and as soon as he met her, he started taking advantage of her. I know he did that shit right away. He's been having sex with her since she was 12 years old. Allegedly. But in my heart, I feel it. It wasn't until she was 14 that people knew about it. And the truth, I love you, the truth, Keep talking about those buzzards. Because that's what the fuck they are. You right. Buzzards. Buzzards. Yes, they are. This is ridiculous. Did you not hear where that little girl's mental space was? The things she's doing in a room alone with this young lady. She's bouncing around, going through stuff. Anxiety, I bet, in her mind. Oh, God. And Lisa at the time didn't think she was 14, of course. She didn't know at the moment she was 14. She just sees the girl as a young chick just like her, who he wants to have a threesome with. A girl that he knows, I guess, from the hood. Wow. So she continues to say, I hope that this would be the end of it. I hope that this would be the end of it. Now that he had fulfilled his fantasy, but it wasn't. He would ask me again, more frequently, and with more aspiring wannabes in the lineup. He'd also have a camera rolling to record every minute. I later realized that he had more than likely deceived me about his desired first-time experience. It was something he was already into doing. He just needed to prime me to get me on board. He seemed to develop an insatiable appetite for threesomes over time. I grew tired of them and was hoping he would do the same, but it only got more rampant. No one could really come around without him initiating one. Most times when he introduced me to another female, I could safely bet the house that a threesome would surely follow. It's something I shouldn't have allowed. But I loved him, and he made me feel as if he loved me too. He even mentioned to me at one point that his mom told him that if a woman loved a man, she wouldn't try to change him. Although I didn't fully believe that. I did love him and thought I could low-key change him for over time. Some of the girls I ended up being pretty cool with, oddly enough. There was one in particular I was really cool with. We'd often joke amongst ourselves. One joke in particular involved him and his hygiene, or lack thereof. He didn't always like to bathe. He would often have sex right after playing basketball, or have sex and just go about his day without hitting the shower first. He didn't change his socks much, so his feet stunk. I can't recall a time I saw him brush his teeth. However, he would have a dentist come to clean them. He would also have his colon cleansed often. Oh, God. He needed to make sure his booty was nice and clean. Oh, Lord. He needed to make sure his booty was clean, though. Often. Wow. That was funny. However, he would often have an odor that told it all. Oh, God. I don't know how how did you girls deal with his fucking funk? How did y'all deal with his funk? I wouldn't be able to deal with it. I would have been out. I'm sorry. I would have been out. Ay, ay, ay. Normally, people shower after sex. Sweaty games of basketball or bowel movements. But that wasn't in his daily routine. He would hit the stage like that as well. It's crazy thinking about how he used to pump in the middle of the stage while all the females went wild over him. He'd probably had just come from having sex or playing ball. He would often wear no underwear, but plenty of B.O. if they only knew. You heard that, ladies? Your king of R&B, he's the king of Smelly Kelly, Smelly Kelly, Smelly Smelly. Woo-wee. If the girls only knew, huh? The girl I was cool with and myself started calling him Pepe Le Pew. Ha ha! They called your king Pepe Le Pew. Pepe Le Pew was the skunk from the Warner Brothers cartoons. Due to some pegging sessions where we would penetrate him anally. So she started to penetrate him anally as well. And this was back in what, 1998? Lord. Okay. Okay. This is how we first came up with the name. So in that moment, and when he would take off his clothes, I would say to her, Pepe Le Pew on you, which meant the skunk smell is on you. She would start laughing, and in turn, he would start laughing, not realizing that we were talking about him. That would help provide some comic relief for me from the stress of the situation, because I was always hesitant to engage in threesomes continuously. I had found comfort in a few coping mechanisms. This was one of them. Sometimes I would pretend that I was trying to be romantic, and I would run him some bath water. Deep down, I really did care about him despite how I felt about the threesomes and wanted him to do better. I could only do this at the hotels because at the studio, they didn't have bathtubs, only showers. I would try to be sexy and offer to wash him off in an attempt to really wash away the funk. I never wanted to. I can't. She said she wanted to wash off that funk. Wow. I never wanted to offend him by telling him he stunk. He once told me a story about when he was younger that the girls didn't like him and how he had a lot of pimples, which could possibly indicate he had problems with hygiene even then. It could have even been something he just never really improved in as he grew older. It's sad now that I think back on how I cared so much about his feelings, even when he didn't seem to show a lot of care for mine. He also had this huge obsession with my butt. He loved to rub on it. When we were together, it would later be the inspiration to one of the songs he wrote, Feeling on Your Booty. He liked to bury his face in my butt as he sung the words booty. And then he would burst out laughing. He told me that girls were buying bodies to look like mine, which would make me feel so good, as well as putting my name in his track, Birthday Song. Oh, so Lisa's name is mentioned in the Birthday Song. Okay, so I gotta go back and hear that song. And what did I say? So you know what that means? That means that engineer that was on the BBC document, he was talking about Lisa Van Allen in the room. Wow. And I want to hear that birthday song. These feel-good moments were often overshadowed by feelings of somberness, shame, and all-around dirtiness. This unclean feeling that I felt inside could only be suppressed by taking long bubble baths, and I took them every chance I could get. Well, that was enough for me to read. We just read through chapters 1 through 3. And that was kind of deep there. Lisa Van Allen. Wow, mamita. Wow. So the rumors are true. His name is Smelly Kelly. He really does stink. He has a funk to him. I mean, I could imagine he uses urine to clean his face. Like, I wouldn't want to kiss him in the face at all. But sometimes love is blind. And women and men do crazy things for love. Well, guys, now that we finished reading those first 3 chapters into Lisa Van Allen's book, Surviving the Pied Piper. Wow. And that's just only the 3rd chapter. Lord, it's going to get deeper. So, make sure you guys hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hit that notification bell if you don't already have it on. And make sure that you put it on all so you can receive all my videos as I drop them. And we will be continuing this book. Hopefully I'll get a chance maybe tomorrow to read it and drop it down, because it's getting closer and closer to his trial. And I think we need to read some more of these girls' stories before the trial starts in July. Yeah, so I'm glad you guys are enjoying my reads. Please drop your comments down below. And hit the like button if you didn't already on your way out. And Diva the Divine Light is out. Peace.